may be the richest and most powerful man in the country, accustomed to getting what he wants. But he has no idea what he's about to encounter.
Play cards, Mr. Rockefeller?
No.
Shame. You could learn a lot about competition.
I know all I need to know.
So, I'm looking to do a deal with an oil refinery. And that could be you.
I'm willing to do an exclusive deal. $1.65 a barrel.
That's a discount of more than a third. There's several refineries in Cleveland. Why should I give you such a deal?
Because I'll fill all your trains with my oil. And if you don't do the deal, I'll fill someone else's trains. Do you trust him?
I don't know.
Rockefeller may have gotten the rate he was looking for, but in return, he's agreed to provide Vanderbilt with over 60 train cars of oil every day. The only problem is, Rockefeller has no way to produce that much kerosene. His capacity is less than half of that. Rockefeller has overpromised, but he knows the deal with Vanderbilt will be the opportunity he's been waiting for. He just needs to find a way to produce more kerosene. It's a daunting task, but John D. Rockefeller has been beating the odds his entire life. Rockefeller is raised in a poor Cleveland household. But even as a young man, he yearns for something more, something bigger, and he knows it isn't going to be handed to him. As a young man, he shows a strong entrepreneurial streak, starting his own small business, selling candy to local children.
Thank you very much. Here's 3 pieces.
From an early age, Rockefeller helps to support his family. Mostly because he was never able to rely on his father.
It cures cancer. Folks, that is right, it cures cancer. Now you're asking yourself, sir, I bet in your mind you're saying, Bill, is this true?
John Rockefeller's father is a con man.
Rebecca, I met 7 years ago, she had pneumonia.
Better known around Cleveland as Devil Bill.
Who would like to buy some? $1.25 a bottle, yes sir.
He disappears for months at a time, leaving his family without money to support themselves.
I'm only here for 1 day. Once I'm gone, I am gone. I may not be back. Never trust anybody, son. Not even me.
With his father gone, Rockefeller is forced to quit school and get a job to support his mother and siblings. His work ethic and intuition will become the building blocks for the American dream.
My great-grandfather, John D. Rockefeller, was an absolutely brilliant businessman. When he started out, he wasn't even in oil or anything. You know, he worked at it very, very hard, and there's an ethic in the Rockefeller family of hard work.
Stuck in a dead-end job, he becomes fixated on finding a big idea and taking a chance.
Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. If you please rise, let us sing hymn 89. Joyful we adore thee, God of glory, Lord above. It's so slow, get out!
life and look at things that are changing and are able to see those things and say, I can create a business out of that.
Rockefeller realizes oil has the potential to change the world and make him rich in the process. But Rockefeller knows that drilling for oil is a gamble, filled with uncertainty. And since he doesn't believe in luck, he starts looking for a way to make money from oil without the risk.
He had a mind for efficiency. And there was probably something in him that looked at the production process and saw how wasteful that was. In the first place, you drill wells and they turn up dry. And then you drill wells and they hit a gusher and half the oil would be lost. And that offended his sense of efficiency.
Rockefeller knows there's a better way.
Today, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. They've heard these great stories, about Apple. But you know what? When you start a company, you can think what the revenues are going to be, how much it's going to be worth to shareholders. But you always need a technical element. You need somebody who knows how to do it and build the things. You need the scientists.
Refining oil turns crude from the ground into kerosene, a clean-burning fuel that can be used in lamps.
Once the oil gets to 350 degrees, the kerosene starts to vaporize. Then once it's cooled, you have a stable, pure product. How much to produce a gallon? 50, 60 cents, I don't know.
Rockefeller's insight puts him one step ahead of his competitors. He believes that while gamblers drill for oil, businessmen refine it.
Whoever could control the refining process could very well have the whole industry.
At 24 years old, Rockefeller invests everything he has, about $4,000, into building his first refinery.
Oh, higher! Higher!
But he struggles early on to find an edge in the industry. That changes when the most powerful man in the country comes calling.
Mr. Rockefeller?
The deal with Vanderbilt gives him cheap shipping rates and the chance to corner the U.S. oil market. But he's overpromised, agreeing to supply 60 barrels a day when his capacity is less than half that. And when you've made a deal with the most powerful man in America, failure is not an option.
You have to be smart, you have to have vision, you have to have all of these different things. But the most successful people are the people that had the right idea but never, ever quit or gave up. The people that really succeed in life are those that don't quit.
Rockefeller needs to quickly expand his company, and to do that, he needs investors. The problem is, kerosene is getting a bad name. Stories of the fuel exploding and burning down homes are on the front page of newspapers across the country, making potential investors skeptical. Due to high demand, many refiners are rushing to market with dangerous kerosene that's extremely volatile. Rockefeller sees the problem as an opportunity. He realizes that there's a need to calm the public's fears and provide them with a product they can rely on.
Oil refining, warehouses, barrel making, and shipping facilities.
Why the name?
Because Standard Oil will be the only company in the industry to guarantee a uniform quality of kerosene.
Rockefellers and all these guys, they were all great salesmen. And at the end of the day, it's the salesmen who make the money.
Well, you can certainly understand how Rockefeller could have named his oil company Standard Oil. Pretty ambitious, organic name. He was creating a standard, and it worked.
Rockefeller's Standard Oil quiets fears and immediately becomes the most sought-after product in the country, bringing in investor after investor. America is expanding rapidly. Cornelius Vanderbilt's railroads have united the country, and commerce now moves faster than ever. But America's newest obsession is light. Clean, safe light. The kind provided by John D. Rockefeller. Oil is changing the world, and the Ohio refiner is leading the charge.
The titans of that day revolutionized business in America. We became the sort of dominant economic force in the world because we could make stuff, we could create stuff, we could build stuff, we could power stuff.
John Rockefeller's Standard Oil is now the largest producer of refined kerosene in the country. And his exclusive deal with Vanderbilt allows him to ship his product to homes throughout the country at incredibly cheap rates. But for Rockefeller, it isn't enough. He's outgrown his deal with Vanderbilt. Once unable to fill Vanderbilt's trains, now he has more oil than the Commodore can possibly ship. And Vanderbilt's biggest competitor knows it. Tom Scott is the president of one of the largest train lines in the country. He wants to take Vanderbilt's place as king of the railroads, and he knows a deal with Rockefeller is the key. Scott heads to Cleveland with his protege, a young up-and-comer named Andrew Carnegie. As Scott's most trusted lieutenant, Carnegie has helped craft the pitch.
What I'm proposing is an alliance between...
You want a cartel between oil and railroads?
I prefer to call it by...
Give me the numbers.
Standard Oil will receive a 40% rebate for every barrel it ships.
We'll send papers over in the morning.
No. A verbal contract is fine.
Rockefeller gets a better deal from Scott than he ever could have gotten from Vanderbilt. The Commodore has lost his competitive edge.
To the great frustration of Vanderbilt, Rockefeller very skillfully played those railroads against each other. Oil was something Rockefeller couldn't afford to let go, and so they fought very hard to get that traffic.
With the railroads in his pocket, Rockefeller can supply every home in the nation with Standard Oil kerosene. And with all that profit, Rockefeller begins to buy out his competitors.
And we need to stand together. I'm offering all of you a way out, so you can hold your heads high. The opportunity to sell to Standard Oil will be a godsend to you all. If you take Standard Oil stock, you and your loved ones will never know want.
His intent is simple. He wants to own every refinery in the country. It's a concept that's been impossible to execute. Today we know it as a monopoly. But Rockefeller isn't just expanding his company. He's also looking to maximize profit by any means necessary.
We've got another refinery. One more into the fold.
Do you want me to take a look at it?
No. I want you to shut it down.
The business of creating monopolies, crushing opposition. Part of me says he did that because it was there to be done. And he could do it better than anybody else, and he made a bloody fortune out of it.
By the time he's finished, Rockefeller controls 90% of the North American oil supply. His company, Standard Oil, is the country's first monopoly. At 33, the Ohio oil man is now the most powerful man in the country. The Commodore has created a monster. He realizes that the only way to combat Rockefeller is for the railroads to start working together. He forms an unlikely alliance with his biggest rival, Tom Scott. And together, they agree to pull all of Rockefeller's deals. To Rockefeller, the move is nothing short of a declaration of war. America is emerging as one of the mightiest nations on earth. The country is now crowded with rail lines, and kerosene lights most homes. The amazing evolution has been led by two men driven by a desire to create a world that few imagined. Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt and John D. Rockefeller have sparked the modernization of the country. But the former partners' interests are no longer aligned. Vanderbilt has formed an unlikely alliance with Tom Scott, aimed at forcing their biggest client to pay going rates. John Rockefeller sees their actions as a declaration of war. And he's not going down without a fight.
John Rockefeller had the ruthlessness that sometimes comes from utter conviction that what he was doing was right. and not just correct, but divinely inspired. And the people who opposed him weren't really entitled to their point of view because their point of view was wrong. It was almost as though they had turned aside God's grace. Well, if you turn aside God's offer of grace, then expect no mercy.
Rockefeller is determined to find another way to transport his oil. He knows if he can't, the railroads will win. Rockefeller's solution again comes from the most unlikely of places.
So we can increase the yield of the kerosene, but then we get more of the volatile waste. We can burn some of it off as fuel in the refinery, but its high flammability creates a storage problem. If we get the higher temperatures, we can start creating the lubricating oils. We'll need to reconfigure the refinery.
Oil in the refinery is moved using large pipes. And Rockefeller realizes if those pipes can transport oil over short distances, they could also be used over longer distances. If Rockefeller can build a pipeline large enough, he'll be able to cut the railroads out of the oil business for good. Investment and incredible risk. But if he gets it right, Rockefeller will be able to do what he loves to do most: win.
It probably comes early in an entrepreneur's life where you realize you're willing to do things in the business world that other people aren't willing to do. Everybody has got ideas and everybody's got ambitions, but most people aren't willing to cross that line. And I think an entrepreneur that's successful, that's your nature. Wherever there's change, wherever there's uncertainty, there's opportunity.
Rockefeller's workers labor around the clock, blasting through the countryside and laying over 1.5 miles of pipeline every day.
Business, in the end, is understanding the playing field. Tell me who's on it, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what is your checkmate play to top them and nail them. And so you're always in that competitive game. You're looking at innovation. You're looking at leapfrogging, trying to get ahead of them. You're never complacent. You're semi-paranoid about what they're doing. That's what a game is all about.
By the time the pipeline is complete, it's over 4,000 miles long, stretching across Ohio and Pennsylvania and connecting thousands of the world's most lucrative oil wells directly to Rockefeller's refineries. John Rockefeller has finally found his way to eliminate the railroads from the oil business. And in the process, he's forever revolutionized the way oil is transported. For 25 years, the railroads have been the biggest industry in the country, the backbone of the American economy. No one has ever had the nerve to take them on. Until now. Rockefeller knows that without his oil, the railroads will struggle to stay alive. It's a colossal blow to the industry. And with all that leverage, Rockefeller has Vanderbilt and the railroads right where he wants them. The United States of America is changing like never before. In just a decade, the country has become one of the most advanced on Earth. And darkness no longer means the end of the day. Two men have driven this remaking of the country. John D. Rockefeller and Cornelius Vanderbilt are locked in a battle of wills.
Commodore, Mr. Rockefeller.
Vanderbilt and his competitors are in drastic search of passengers and cargo to fill the trains running on their lines.
In the 1870s, the country needed to be connected via railroads. And what happens then is everybody who thinks they have an edge in the railroad business goes out and raises money, and they start their own railroad. And what happened then, as we've seen happen many a time since then, is it created a huge bubble.
John D. Rockefeller's oil makes up nearly 40% of the cargo shipped on the rails. But when Vanderbilt teams with his biggest rival to push for a rate increase, Rockefeller takes it as a declaration of war. He builds a pipeline in response and begins to pull his shipments. And since the railroads have been drastically overbuilt, losing cargo means losing money. Stocks plummet as investors run scared.
When prices get out of control and smart people decide, wow, this thing is a bubble, I want out, then you can get a collapse very quickly.
By the time the panic is through, 1/3 of the country's 360 railroad companies have gone bankrupt.
Every crisis of this type, whether it's 2008 or 1873, it's got the same roots, namely that it was unanticipated. So a necessary condition for a crisis is nobody expects it.
The crash is the worst America has seen in its short history. Unsure how to prevent a complete collapse, the stock exchange shuts down and stays closed for 10 straight days.
The Panic of 1873 triggered the first full-blown national depression, and nobody quite knew what to do about it. For the first time, large, very large numbers of American workers were without jobs. Workers got laid off, but the owners, they still lived in the style that they were accustomed to. But no one was shedding any tears from John D. Rockefeller. People were saving their tears for themselves when they found themselves out of work, out of their homes, out of food, out of hope.
While many of the biggest companies in the country struggle to survive, Rockefeller sees opportunity. His belief in the survival of the fittest kicking in. As his competition collapses, Rockefeller picks them off, buying out bankrupt oil companies for next to nothing.
I find that I do better in bad markets. I buy things in bad markets. And you can't do that in a great economy. You can't buy it. Either you're going to buy it very expensively or not be able to buy it at all. So there's a lot of opportunity, I find, in the bad times.
By the time the Depression is through, Rockefeller has created the largest corporate empire in America.
He was playing the game of industry, and he was simply better at it than everybody else. He saw the industrial marketplace as a place for the survival of the fittest, and he was fitter than anybody else. Therefore, he survived. Not only that, therefore, he deserved to survive, and they didn't.
While Rockefeller expands his company, his adversaries at the railroads are struggling to survive. Then, at the height of the Depression, the king of the American railroads, Cornelius Vanderbilt, dies at the age of 82. Vanderbilt leaves his empire worth over $100 million to his son, William. Rockefeller knows that without Vanderbilt, he would have never been able to build his empire. But Rockefeller's last remaining adversaries refuse to go down without a fight. Tom Scott and his protege, Andrew Carnegie, have managed to survive. And since Rockefeller's pipeline doesn't extend to Pittsburgh, he's forced to continue to use their trains. But Scott knows if he and Carnegie don't diversify, they won't survive. Scott devises an aggressive plan to expand his empire. One that's sure to catch Rockefeller's attention. He's going to break into the oil business by building a pipeline of his own. But if there's one thing John Rockefeller hates more than anything else, it's competition. Tom Scott is in for war.
I've tried to be friendly to the Pennsylvania. I've given you plenty of business, have I not? And now I find that you're invading my field. And that, my friend, is piracy.
We'll take your feelings into account, Mr. Rockefeller.
2/3 of the oil you carry comes from me. If you don't retreat, I'll take it to the other railroads.
That's As far as I'm aware, there isn't another railroad that runs from Pittsburgh to New York.
America's growth after the Civil War is driven by railroads uniting the country and oil lighting the way. No one has capitalized on the growth more than John D. Rockefeller, who now controls 90% of the U.S. oil market. With the death of Cornelius Vanderbilt, only one man stands in the way of Rockefeller's complete control of oil. Tom Scott.
There was a sort of mutual admiration among the big capitalists, but it was an admiration that was accompanied by deep suspicion. The big capitalists of the day eyed each other very warily. Rockefeller looked on Tom Scott of the Penn Railroad as a competitor.
Tom Scott's trains transport oil to and from Rockefeller's refineries in Pittsburgh, where the Standard Oil pipeline doesn't reach. With all that leverage, Scott is confident he has the ammunition to take on Rockefeller. But Rockefeller isn't one to back down from a fight.
I don't want one drop of our oil traveling on the Pennsylvania. But what about the Pittsburgh refineries? Shut them down.
Shutting down his refineries will cost Standard Oil a fortune in lost revenue. But for Rockefeller, crushing his competition matters more than anything else. Without Rockefeller's oil, Scott loses nearly half of his business, forcing him to lay off tens of thousands of workers and drastically cut wages. Those workers take to the streets in protest. And as darkness falls on Pittsburgh, they turn violent. A fire is set in Tom Scott's train yards. Before the night is over, more than 39 buildings and over 1,200 train cars are destroyed. Tom Scott's company lays in ruin.
This is how capitalism works. The railroads had been the big suppliers of transportation to the oil industry. And so the railroads quite naturally resisted. They dug in their heels whatever they could. Eventually they lost.
Come on. Let's go.
Rockefeller has replaced Cornelius Vanderbilt as the richest man in America. His net worth is now over $150 million, or $225 billion today.
It's dazzlingly amazing that one individual was able to corner about 98% of all the kerosene and eventually oil production in the world. He was a brilliant business person. I can only give him credit for that. I don't have to give him credit for the way that he became that powerful.
But all titans are targets. And now Rockefeller is about to come face to face